All right, MYB community, thank you so much for coming back. Chaperon, the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. Thank you so much for coming back here on this episode number 162. I'm grateful for all of you for your support. Hope that you're all doing well, even with everything that's going on all around the country and all around the world. I hope that you find yourself at peace to whatever that means, and I hope that you and your family are doing well. Recording this on a Monday, so coming off of a tremendous weekend. It was very hot here in Memphis, but hopefully weather was well where you were. And again, you're ready to get started here with my special guest today, who's joining all the way from Venice Beach, the other part of the world here, but just a tremendous entrepreneur, and reading about him and learning about his company. My wife and I were actually talking about it over the weekend. Because, obviously we're in anniversary season. We had her birthday, and we got anniversary season coming up, and we had placed an order for flowers and things like that. And so our next guest represents ownership in that company that we placed that order that we were excited about. And so we have John Tabis here, who's the founder and CEO of the Bouqs Company. John, thank you so much for taking time out to join. I know you're extremely busy. There's a ton going on. There are a lot of things you could be doing other than talking to me on a podcast. So I thank you so much for taking time out to join.
No, I so appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Excellent. And so we've got a lot to get to, John. So let's jump right in. Tell me and the MYB community, just, who is John Tabis?
Sure. So John Tabis is me. I am John. John is I. I'm a dude that grew up in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, a village, not even a town, a village called Rural Ridge, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
We had one stop sign and a post office and,
Right.
a shut down gas station, and that was it. Everything else was at least a 30-minute drive away. I got bused to school an hour one way.
Wow.
Grew up in it was a tiny little mining town. Again, 400 people. I was related to about a third of that 400 people.
Wow.
That's how small of a town it was.
Town.
So I'm very much sort of like roots-wise a small town guy, but always with really big dreams. Always wanted to sort of go and do big things, achieve big things. And now live in Venice Beach, as you mentioned, here in LA. Work in the startup community. Been in this community for about 8 years-ish now.
Yeah.
And previous to that, I had a career in strategy and brand at both the Walt Disney Company and Bain Company prior to that, and a little bit of advertising in between. So I love ideas. I love brands. I love people and people that want to change the world for the better. I love my family, and I love a really good cold IPA.
There you go. You know what? I love a good cold IPA too, John.
There we go.
I had a good one. Matter of fact, there's a great place of all places, South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Shout out to them. There's a great bar there in downtown. Forgive me, I don't recall the name. I had one of the best IPAs ever there. So I need
not
to
much better than that, right?
Yeah,
a great bar with a cold beer.
Oh my goodness, it was in the afternoon. It was after a conference. It was beautiful. A banking conference of all things.
For sort of pseudo normalcy, where we can all just go back, sit down at a nice dimly lit dive bar, and just crack a cold one and cheers to the random person next to us. Like someday we'll get there again.
Yeah, we'll get there again, and we won't have to do it by lifting down a mask or having gloves on either. So.
Right, exactly.
So John, kind of in those early days, you kind of alluded to kind of your marketing background. You worked for some pretty big brands, Disney, ESPN, Gerber, just to say a few. Take me back to those days. What were those endeavors like? What were some of the things you were responsible for? And maybe what was a crazy idea of maybe something that got launched that you thought, oh, this is insane?
Sure. Yeah. So I had a couple years in advertising where Gerber was my core client. It was sort of very formative years, a couple years out of school, learning the ropes in communication, marketing, et cetera. And that was at a shop called Noble BBDS, which was, I think, the largest independent ad agency at the time, outside of the big like Publicis groups and all those sorts of things.
Right.
And great group of people, great client. Learned a lot about having kids when I was, 24 and single. So it came in handy later.
Right.
And Speaking of crazy ad campaigns, one of the ones that we did there was it was around childhood obesity. We partnered with Gerber, because Gerber's all about healthy food, healthy eating, good habits start young, all that kind of good stuff. And we were talking about like different ways of really waking people up to that. And we had an amazing execution. Essentially, it was a creative. It was like a print ad, a creative with a baby bottle, filled up with soda.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where you look at it and it's just jarring, because you see sort of pop. I call it pop soda, whatever. What do you guys call it in Tennessee?
Well, so we either just refer to it as a Coke. Really here we just use.
Oh, you guys are
that name.
You guys are the Coke people.
But we're Coke people. But now I'm from Chicago originally, so I still get into some of the pop, that type of thing.
Yeah. I was pop growing up. LA is soda. Yeah. My wife grew up in Chicago too. She grew up in Libertyville.
Okay.
Up north suburbs.
Yeah, north.
And she's still fighting the pop battle out here in LA. She'll battle anybody. She'll be like, no, it's not soda. But anyway, it was a jarring execution, because you think of a baby bottle and you think of milk or formula or something that's very wholesome and whatever. And then all of a sudden you have this sugar water in there, and it just sort of it shocked people when they saw it, because it felt so wrong, right? You're going to put soda into a bottle. So that was sort of a crazy thing from back in the day. So I had a couple years there, and then move out to LA to go to business school at UCLA, and then spent about 6.5 years at Disney. And that was, I worked in brand strategy, so less around marketing execution. So I don't have like a crazy marketing sort of execution story, but just in general, the thing that was crazy about it for me was, just fresh out of business school, was the scope and scale of the stuff that we worked on.
Right.
I got to work on, I think it was the first week, my boss said to me, "Hey, ESPN called. We're going to redesign ESPN.com. Let's go." And we flew to New York the next day.
Wow.
And for the next couple months, we got to work with, the greatest sporting. I mean, I was on the set of Sports Center. I was, as a sports fan, it was so cool.
Oh yeah.
And so got to spend time just thinking about how the behaviors were changing, and how we need to think about ESPN.com. And we didn't do the actual designing. That was not our function, but it was sort of bringing the voice of the customer into the conversation. And that was super cool. I got to work on gaming strategy in South Korea. So I got to fly to Seoul and go to some of like the, online tournaments, which now are kind of normal in the US, but back then was 2007. People were like, online sports tournaments? Like, what's that all about?
Right.
Now there's Twitch, and it's like a global phenomenon. Back then it was super weird. So that was what was best about that time, was just how big the things were that we worked on. And it took, a decade sometimes to come to fruition. But that was really what was craziest about those days at Disney.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And those experiences then, John, shape you for now what's your company. Tell me about the Bouqs Company. How did it come about? How did you interact and kind of work with your other co-founders? And then, I guess overall, why flowers for you?
Sure.
Why, because I'm leading somewhere with that as it relates to today's time. I think there's a lot of parallels in your business and your business model, and the unique relationship that the human being has with flowers. So, but yeah, first talk about kind of those early days with the Bouqs Company and kind of why the flower gift industry.
Yeah. So I was at Disney, and I'd been there for about 6 years, and I started to just get itchy. Like I always had like the side hustle, I would co-write a CD, or I had a blog that got to a couple 100,000 visitors at some point. And I was always having these little projects, but none of them were jobs.
Right.
And in Disney, which was a great job, I would never say anything bad about Disney. It's a great place to work. But as a director of brand strategy in Disney corporate, there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to go off and try crazy ideas, right? Because I was part of a group, and we had our mandate.
Right.
And so I had some friends who had started some companies, and I started talking to them, and I kind of had like, I'd like to run something, create something, but I don't know how to do that. And so I thought, I'll just go get a job at a startup.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in and of itself was a whole journey, because when you're a corporate strategy guy at Disney, everyone in startups just think you're like a corporate suit who can't really do anything, right?
Right.
We don't want your PowerPoint skills, you suit, right?
Right.
And so even getting a job was really hard. I was like, wait, guys, like I good grades. I went to good schools. Like I've been successful at Disney. Come on, I can help you. And they'd be like, no, you can't. You don't know anything about startups.
Right.
which is a lesson in and of itself around personal branding, right? Like I'm the same person that I was then. And now I've raised $75 million, built a company of 80 people. You know, we've done hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue.
Right.
But if you had asked a whole bunch of people back then, they're like, no, corporate suit, right?
Yeah.
And so personal branding matters, and like finding ways to adjust that, right? As you're trying to evolve your career is really important. You know, now I'm viewed as like the crazy founder guy. Yeah. I used to be the corporate suit. Now I'm the crazy founder guy. I'm like, I'm the same human. I can be these things at the same time. But anyway, I took a job at a great company called ShoeDazzle, which was Kim Kardashian's subscription shoe company.
Right.
And within 2 weeks, I was hooked on it because it was just so much happening. It was kinetic. It was like, we're changing this, we're changing that. What's happening next? What's happening now? And it was like, boom, 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 boom. So I really loved the energy of it. And around the same time, my co-founder and I, who were good friends from undergrad, we had started a terrible band together back in 1999.
Terrible band.
Terrible band. But it was very fun.
Right.
And he had moved back to Ecuador, where he was from, and he was running a rose farm. And we just started talking about his business, and his challenges were around sort of transparency to the customer. And his big sort of gripe, I guess, with the way the industry worked was that they would spend a ton of time and a ton of money on doing it the right way. And that meant, you know, paying a living wage, treating their people really well. They would do English as a second language on site for free for their workers. And then they invested a lot in sustainability as well, right? Recycling their rainwater, you know, not cutting down the rainforest, not using red label chemicals, using natural predators to kill the bugs instead of them eating the flowers, all these great things.
Yeah.
But there was no way to tell the customer about that. And there was no way for the customer even to know what their rose looked like versus another rose, because they look the same.
Right.
And so, you know, whereas in food over the last 20 years, now you walk into a store, it says organic or it says no GMO.
Well, exactly.
That conversation hadn't really started yet in floral. And so he wanted to shorten the distance between his farm and the customer. And solve a lot of those problems along the way. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I started digging into the industry as I was sort of helping him think through those things. And then I was shopping in the industry, and I just found it almost offensive. Like I would click on an ad that said $19.99. I would get the checkout. It'd be like $84.
Yeah. Okay. Stay right there, John, because that was a point of contention for my wife and I. You know, now my wife would buy flowers. So she runs a pharmacy clinic. She would buy flowers for Secretary's Day and, you know, all these different corporate days, right, that you have, you know, and obviously that's a big gift thing. So she got into it, of course, as a man, you know, husband, you know, guy, you know, we all know all too well that very point. That's something that would chat me all the time is I'll go and I find something I really like. It's $29.99. You're thinking, okay, after shipping, okay, if it's $40, whatever. But
that's
then
reasonable.
I get to the damn checkout and it's, you know, $89.75 and it, you know, debit or credit. It's like, what? You know, what did I buy? All I did was get the flowers that you're advertising for $29.99. So again, that right off top, I love that you solved that for us.
and I found that just wildly frustrating.
That's crazy.
And look, you know, at Bouqs, we run promotions, so we'll do a discount, but if we say it's 15% off, it's 15% off.
Right.
And we say our shipping is always $12 if you register as an account, and it's always $12.
Yeah.
And if it's over $100, it's free. So like that, like I went through that experience. I was just like, I don't love the way any of this looks. I don't love the way it's priced. I don't love the things that are selling. And I was just like, none of this is for me. And when I talked to my co-founder again, I was like, man, like the farmer, if you represent the farmer's unhappy.
Yeah.
With how this is going. And if I represent the customer at all, I'm unhappy. So like what's going on in between the two of us? I would love that you would love to sell me your product and tell me why it's great. And I would love to buy it, but we can't get together.
Right.
And we were like, let's just build that solution. Let's go out and build it. And so that was really the inspiration, was sort of both of us seeing problems from personal perspectives, and then, you know, doing some research in the industry, of course, and sort of going off and just trying. And so we spent that summer, 2012, just hacking together a team with no money and no resources. It was the world's ugliest website. It barely worked. But it worked, and we got it off the ground. And the nice thing about just doing it, and this is sort of what I say to entrepreneurs who are not yet entrepreneurs, is like the way you start a company is just by starting a company.
Yeah.
You don't need to have the perfect skills, the perfect website, a lot of money. a developer. You don't need any of that stuff. You just need to go and start it. What does that mean? You form an LLC or a C Corp or whatever. You beg, borrow, and almost steal. You don't steal, but you almost steal time and resources, and you get friends and family, and you just get it going. And then all of a sudden, if it works a little bit, the rest of it will come your way. And so that's sort of what we did. And it's been a great journey so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to come back to that point because you made a really good point as a best practice for entrepreneurs, whether you're the lifestyle entrepreneur, whatever it is just getting started. And, I've always shared, John, with the audience that, 80% of, like you say, there's a stat that 80% of success is just showing up. And I've been a benefactor of just showing up, right? Even I don't have to be the best. I don't have to be the best looking, anything other than I'm available and I'm there to do it. And then I'm consistent in doing it.
Well, let's just be honest. You're kind of the best looking. So you're,
well,
you got that going. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on
glowing. The screen is glowing
in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, man. So that's how it ends up going, my man. You were on Shark Tank back in 2014. I think it was episode number 526, I believe, or 529, one of those.
It was the highest rated season in Shark Tank history. I'm not saying it was because of us.
Yeah. Well,
but I'm not saying it wasn't.
Yeah, that may be someone else's words, not yours. Yeah. So what I want to do for our audience, and for those listening to the podcast, you'll hear this. And then for those watching on YouTube and our other video channels, you'll be able to see this. But what I want to do, John, what I thought would be really cool is to get kind of your thoughts and reaction on your clip from that time. Albeit it was 6 years ago. I remember watching it live because I'm a big Shark Tank person. I was sitting in, this is eerie. I could tell you exactly where on my couch I was sitting when I was watching that episode.
You remember that day?
I remember the side of the couch that I was sitting on when I was watching. That's how either creepy or how leery this is. But so like I said, what I want to do is just kind of show this particular episode. If I can get it to pull up, of course, but I just want to show and get your reaction.
This is the Shark Tank, where hopeful entrepreneurs get a once-in-a-lifetime chance to pitch the sharks in hopes of getting an investment to start, grow, or save their businesses.
The most difficult thing about wearing Angel Lift for women is just to be quiet for a few minutes.
The entrepreneurs must convince a shark to invest the full amount they're asking for, or they'll walk away with nothing.
I'm seeking $258,000 for 3%.
That's a problem.
Ooh. If the sharks hear a great idea,
we did about $3 million retail.
You did $3 million in sales?
Correct.
Wow. I'm taking you way more seriously now.
They're ready to invest using their own money.
I'll offer you the $80,000. I'll lend you $250,000 as debt.
And they're willing to fight each other for a piece of the action.
We really do think we can make that $5 million.
What kind of greed is this?
Don't let the party hats fool you. We're savvy businesswomen.
I could put one match to the bottom of that and it would burn beautifully.
You're a gold digger.
I've never heard anybody say that here in the Shark Tank. Sheer evil.
Who are the sharks?
Let's get through all this. All right.
This is fun. It's fun to watch.
Is an entrepreneur who believes he has a better way to send a thoughtful gift.
Hello, sharks. I'm John, and I'm so excited to introduce to you today the world's most genuine online floral solution, the Bouqs Company. I'm here seeking an investment of $258,000 in exchange for 3% of our business. Now, just by way of introduction, I'm a Pittsburgh-born guy who knows how to make a lot of money, Mr. Wonderful, selling lovely flowers to be sent to the lovely people in our lives. Lori and Barbara, these are for you.
What a schmoozer.
Man after my own heart.
That's our Desperado bouquet. This is our diamond.
You know how to suck up to me, baby, and I love it.
Are those real or are they fake?
They're real. They're beautiful.
Oh, wow. They smell great.
So this business is working because there are really major consumer pain points in this industry. They say it's $19.99, you check out at $64.50. What's up with that? Bait and switch product. You see a photo? It's not what arrives. And this is flowers. This is supposed to feel good. There's a solution, and the solution is Bouqs. Bouqs are bouquets simplified. Now there's 3 things that we do to really make our business special. The first, we have one price. It's $40. $40 including shipping. There are no care and handling charges. And we also don't try to sell you a cheesy plastic butterfly or some balloons that just degrades the experience. The second thing we do differently is we ship straight from eco-friendly, sustainable farms located on the equator on the side of a volcano. Seriously, that's the volcano. It also means you get a really fresh stem because it comes straight from the farm. The third and final thing we do differently is our concierge service. You can schedule an entire year's worth of deliveries, birthdays, anniversaries, important business dates. We take care of it for you, and we do it all at a discount. Business is blooming. Let's get you guys out of the water and onto the volcano. Who's with me as we build the next big flower brand at the Bouqs Company?
Tell us about the business.
The business is essentially an e-commerce business. We launched this business about 11 months ago. This year to date, we've done $700,000 in sales with almost no marketing budget.
Wow, good for you.
What are you attributing your success to?
I think people were ready for something that feels a little different in this space.
Is this a $40 bouquet? This bouquet you
That's
just
a $50 bouquet.
I thought you said
I thought you said everything was 40.
Everything was 40.
So our $40 price is for all of our SKUs, and you can double that SKU for $10 more, and you can triple it for
When you
$10
say
more.
double, do you mean double the amount of flowers?
Exactly.
So
That's the most
if
exciting
mine is a-
angle, and you didn't even
It
mention
really
that.
is. That's a great angle.
Let's go back for a second before we dive into the numbers. How did you even start the business?
We started the company actually with my co-founder. His name's JP Montufar. He's actually on the volcano, which is why he couldn't be here today. And he's the sort of floral farming expert, and I'm more of the front-end operations, marketing, brand side of things.
And explain to us the volcano. I don't know a lot about where different flowers come from. At the bottom of this volcano, are there a lot of very prolific floral farms?
Absolutely.
What is your cost of customer acquisition?
Our average year to date is $13. Last month was $20.
Wow. Just give us what data went into that number.
So it's a combination of some really amazing PR. Oprah Magazine, Daily Candy, Thrill List, Wall Street Journal.
How much money have you spent just on PR?
No, not PR, marketing, advertising.
Total marketing to date has been about $70,000.
What does the $40 bouquet cost you?
We're at 40 to 50% gross margins on the smallest size. When we get up to the triple bouquets, we're closer to the 50% end of that range.
Do you ship overnight? I ordered today. It's my husband's birthday tomorrow. Do I get them tomorrow?
We do not. It is 6 days to delivery.
Whoa.
Your first order.
6
Oh, I
days.
think you just ran into a buzzsaw.
John, the average guy doesn't
Whoa.
realize it's his wife's birthday until that morning.
I understand it.
How is he
Because
going to
she
wait
tells
6
him.
days?
So 2 answers to this question. One is overnight shipping launches in 3 weeks. We're doing the same exact model with
okay.
California farms to satisfy the shorter lead time.
What will the
Same
price
prices,
be with
same
overnight
margins?
shipping?
$10 more on everything, slightly lower margin.
So you're
aren't you-
totally changing your model already.
I don't know that we're changing it. It's still farm
You
fresh,
up the price.
farm direct.
You have it from California, and it's going to be $50. Actually.
Yes. Some of our roses will last in your home 3 weeks. And
Why
people
is
tweet about
that?
that. People talk about it.
What do you attribute that to?
So my co-founder JP's background in biology has come in very handy. We actually have a proprietary process that we use to hydrate the flowers. And then the other thing is you're getting these flowers 4 or 5 days after they were cut. Whenever you're at a local florist, they're just by definition, because it takes so long for them to get there, then they have to hold that inventory, just much older flowers.
Let's go back to the numbers because no one's tackled what really matters here, your valuation. My math, I think, is correct at $8.6 million you're asking for?
That's right.
Okay, so let's be pragmatic. You're going to do $800,000 in this calendar year, right?
We're going to do 1.2 million.
And you're going to make on that about $250,000 pre-tax?
We did 1.7 million that year.
So how do I value your business? Give me the metrics that makes you worth $8.6 million.
Sure. So the growth has been astronomical. We started the business 10 months ago, and we started with $13,000 in a total sort of friends and family round, which was literally like my parents and my sisters and my best friends. And we grew that into $700,000 in sales.
You said you raised 13,000 friends and family. Have you raised any money since then?
We closed a seed round in May of 1.1 million.
At what valuation?
That was a 5.2 post money.
To me, that's a huge problem. I don't like to be just one of many. I don't like to be dumb money. And for that reason, I'm out.
Wow, Martin.
I was bummed. I was bummed when
You
Martin-
just raised 1.1. Why are you here looking for 258?
We're actually raising a full round of $1 million.
So you have an existing round that's open, and the investors are willing to pay a 40 times free cash flow. I'm a very pragmatic investor. I don't care what you're selling. What matters in business is cash flow. That's it. You're asking me to pay 40 times, which would be the absolute premium that I would pay for a much larger company.
But he's growing.
Yeah, but it's a flower business.
Your angle, the thing that I saw as different.
What's his angle?
Was
Tell me that.
That it's $40 a bouquet. That's it. No added charges, no shipping and handling, and you can upgrade for $10 to a $50 bouquet. My problem is, all your competition can do exactly what you said if they like the idea and the strategy. So for me, I think that this doesn't have an edge anymore over any other floral company. I'm out.
All right, look, $258,000 for 3%. I mean, it's such a small, irrelevant amount to what you've already raised. I have a challenge with that. And I don't know if your competitive advantage is sustainable. I'm out.
I wanted to
One
address
thing is that
the name of your business.
competitive advantage is sustainable.
I think it's a terrible name. It's hard to spell, hard to remember. If you gave me a spelling test, it would take me 10 times to really get it. I'm out.
He's out because of the spelling.
I thought that was
Usual all roads back to Mr. Wonderful. I tell you, John, there's one problem with your deal. You are crazy expensive. I think the risk in your deal is not executional risk, 'cause it sounds like you know what you're doing. It's exit risk. You have to be acquired by a strategic.
Very true.
You're in the Neverland. You're in a place where it's not that attractive, and you didn't really differentiate yourself against the commodity other than to tell me you're a better marketer. That may be true, but I think you may die of old age waiting to exit. But there's another problem. If I want to send flowers to your grave, I have to wait 6 days. And I think you died here today. I'm out.
Well, I very much appreciate all of your time and your input, and thank you so much for having me.
Good luck, John.
Thank you for the flower.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Kevin sending flowers to my grave was a really funny comment, but he forgot that we offer overnight shipping from California, so they can show up to my grave right on time. Brutal.
Oh, man.
That was fun.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it since probably 2014.
Yeah, I was wondering, had you watched this before, but that was ABC's Shark Tank episode there in 2014 that our guest, John Tabis, founder and CEO of the Bouqs Company, was on and pitched to. So let's dive into that a little bit, because that was fun. I love to see your reactions and things like that to watching it. I think that's really cool. So John, I guess back up a little bit. How did you get on Shark Tank? And, what kind of led up to that day?
Yeah, so I was a Shark Tank fan, much like yourself. I watched religiously. My wife wasn't as into it, so it was sort of one of those few shows that were just sort of for me. And I remember actually when they greenlit it at ABC, I was actually working at Disney at the time, and I thought this was going to be like a 2-season max show because I was like, it's too inside baseball, too businessy. Like that's not popular enough.
Right.
And then this is why I'm not a TV executive, because obviously it's been a wild success. But yeah, I was a big fan. And then one of the alumni lists at UCLA, someone had mentioned that they are friends with a producer. Yeah. And they were looking for startups that had raised some money to kind of join because they had done all mom and pop out of the garage kind of stories. Right. And we had just raised our seed round. And I thought, I should apply. Like, why not? It's right down the street. We're about 3 miles from the Sony lot where they record the show. Yeah. And so I thought on a lark, we'll fill out an application. And we were really lucky to get called in, do a couple calls with the producers, and then drive over there and meet them. And we were really lucky to be chosen. Yeah, no doubt about it. And let's get into the show. So obviously you've got the sharks right there. You seem to be very comfortable in front of them. Was there any nervousness at all? Or are you just kind of, this is routine and you? Yeah, I generally don't get nervous in those types of situations. I have a very long view of the world, and I'm very cognizant of how tiny I am in the universe. And so long term, this is always my experiment. Who was the 12th president of the United States? Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, don't recall. No one ever knows. Yeah. So if we can't remember the 12th president of the United States, no one's going to remember long-term my Shark Tank appearance. Right. So I'm like not too worried, right? It's not going to be some terrible thing if it goes bad or whatever. Maybe it's kind of like, all right, well, I'll move on with our lives. And so I don't generally get too nervous. I would say though, that the thing that's most interesting about Shark Tank is when you walk in and the doors open, you see the sharks. That is the first time you see the sharks.
Is it?
There's no like hanging out beforehand and shaking hands.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there anything?
None of that. You walk in and they're there, and then you film for, I filmed for almost 2 hours. It was like an hour and 47 minutes. To get that 7-8 minutes clip, it was an hour and 45. And so I think the hardest part in watching it back and remembering the experience of filming is things didn't happen in that order.
Yeah.
Like my face that I made when someone said something was not the face I made, like they edit it, right, to get you the best content as they should.
Yeah.
And so it was the hardest part was just the longevity, right? You're under lights, they're cooking you. I was wearing a sweater. It was like August. It was pretty warm.
Yeah.
And you're talking so long and your mouth just gets super dry, like just because of the cooking and all the talking for, again, 2 hours. And luckily at one point a light went out and they let me get a sip of water because I was dying.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I was just super dry. It was like,
yeah.
But it was super fun. And, even though I didn't get a deal and there was a lot of really rough feedback, I didn't take any of it really that negatively because I really did think for all of them, it came down to our price. Our price is high, right? Yeah. An $8 million valuation on Shark Tank is like roughly 20 or 30 times the average valuation they invest in.
Right.
But that was the valuation that a bunch of other really smart investors were paying. So that was our price.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so if you had been provided an offer, I guess, who would you have loved to have done business with, one or more of the sharks there? And, would you have, I guess you don't know if you would counter or not, depending on what they would give you. But I guess overall, John, who would you have preferred to work with, out of that group?
Yeah. So ironically, about 3 years after I was on the show, it was 2:59. I remember looking at my phone. I had a 3 o'clock call.
Yeah.
And at 2:59, my phone rang and I thought it was my call. And it was actually Robert Herjavec.
Really? Wow.
And Robert Herjavec goes, "Hey, John, it's Robert from Shark Tank." And I was like,
yeah, hey,
no meeting set up, no assistant calling me or emailing, nothing. Right. He just called me out of the blue on his phone one day. He's like on the car. And I was like, "Okay, Robert, what's up?" And I was like, "Cancel my 3,
Right.
And Robert was getting married to Kim Johnson from Dancing with the Stars. And he was
right. I remember that.
He was floored by how expensive the flowers were going to be. And he wanted me to help him out. And so in engaging with his wedding, I taught him about the business. And he ended up investing after all anyway.
Did he? Okay, wow.
And so Robert was sort of my guy, and he ended up being our guy. And so I talked to him like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, I know you may not be at liberty to disclose what, the terms of what he invested, but was it similar to what you were proposing on the show, or was it a complete different kind of time?
Oh, yeah. So this is, 3 years later. I can't talk about what our valuation was, but it was a heck of a lot higher than 8.6 million.
Right.
And in that round, we raised a total of $24 million. So he was part of that bigger Series C financing.
Yeah.
Which we just eclipsed in January. We announced a $30 million growth raise. And so he was part of that. And he's been a great resource, ever since.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I found fun in kind of hearing the comments, I guess, from John on Shark Tank and his appearance on Shark Tank. So MYB, I hope that you found that to be fun. And John, I'm glad you found that fun. So
yeah, one of the really fun parts was, Barbara just trashed the name. She was like, "Oh, Bouqs." I think like a week later, I started seeing orders from her. And all of a sudden, she became like a really great customer, and she just started ordering all the time.
So the name didn't bother her that much.
Name didn't bother her enough. She became a loyal client. So,
yeah, that's good.
Love me some Barbara, and she's tweeted about us and posted about us on LinkedIn, and she's been a fan. And what's funny is people don't know that she actually ran a floral business. It was like her first business she ever started.
Oh, really?
And so
okay. I've always thought of her as real estate, but
yeah, that's how she's really made her money. But her very first business was a floral shop, and so I thought maybe we could get her in because she had a passion, for the business. But she also knew because of that it's really hard. It's a really hard category. It's not a simple operational challenge. It's not a simple marketing challenge, and so maybe that made her a little nervous. But she's been a great supporter in other ways.
Yep, absolutely. And so, John, just to shift gears just a little bit, because obviously the world has been impacted by a double whammy of man versus virus that has picked up, unfortunately, with COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And then you have kind of man versus itself, which is the racial and, protests and things like that have all kind of, come to light here over the last, 2 to 3 months. Talk a little bit about how, let's start with the pandemic kind of first. How has the pandemic impacted, I guess, for you and your family personally, and then, also for the business? I'm curious as to, how business was flowing leading up to the pandemic, and then once things kind of shut down, how that went. And now as you're seeing things kind of open back up, does that create new opportunities and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I think, so on the personal side, I think, the biggest change for us was all the kids at home all day, every day. Right. And it's a big change for us as parents, but like a really big change for them. And I think that's the part where I've been sort of most personally saddened by it. Right. Because I've had friends and family get COVID and be sick, but all of them have made it through just fine. So we haven't been personally impacted on that side. Yeah. But like just watching the kids, having to explain to my, 8-year-old, no, you can't see your best friend. When can I see him? I don't know. Right. Those types of moments, I think, are certainly hard on the kids. And then just the day-to-day logistics of having 3 children at home and doing work. Right. Like, my daughter could walk in here any minute and just be like,
same for mine. I've got 3 daughters.
You just never know. Right.
Yeah. And they're all around that same age that you. I've got 10, 9, and 7. So all 3 girls.
So we have 8 and then 5-year-old twins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Twin girls or boys?
One of each.
One of each. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Awesome.
So I think personally that's been the biggest adjustment is just, and for a while we just couldn't go anywhere. And I think that was really tough. We were just like in the house.
Right.
And in some ways we've almost gotten used to that. Like now we can go places and we're finding ourselves not doing it so much. Right. Sort of like we're inching our way out into the world, right? It's like a little too bright for our eyes because we've been stuck inside.
Yeah.
So from a business perspective, we actually went to remote work about 2 weeks before California made it mandatory.
Wow.
We saw it coming. We had some anxious workers who were just nervous about it. And we just said, hey, look, we can do this from home. Let's just do it from home. We figured it'd be 2-3 weeks max. On the other side, we'll come out, we'll be back to normal. And lo and behold, obviously that has not been the case. The team has done an amazing job. Everyone has adapted very well. Of course, I think we all wish we were back together in the office. I think everyone misses the camaraderie and the social nature of work. Yeah. But the team has done a great job. On the business operations, we're actually very lucky. The way we're set up is we have all these farms around the world, and farms tend to be in rural areas where there aren't a lot of people. So there just aren't a lot of cases of the disease.
Sure.
And there's a lot of space, and it's largely outdoors. So it's harder just to, have things transmit. Right. So
exactly.
Operationally, we've been pretty darn good. And then in terms of consumer demand, we've actually seen it get stronger, if anything. I think as people were locked at home, they can't go to a graduation party. They can't go to an anniversary. They can't go to a birthday party. And so they're sending things instead. And flowers is a thing that you often send. And so if anything, we've seen, tailwinds to the business because of it. And it's a really weird thing. I've said this a bunch of times, like we've just been trying to focus on how we can help because we know that so many businesses have been impacted in such a major way and in the negative. Right. And so we focused a lot on, we've given a lot of flowers to frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, administrators in hospitals, whatever it might be, to just give them a little bit of a pick-me-up at a time when, they were really struggling with just the number of cases, the morbidity of it, the challenges of lack of PPE and all those types of things. So we just tried to use what has been relatively good fortune for us and just try to help the community as best we can.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's definitely great stuff, John. And let's add to the second part of that, which you have what I refer to as this awakening that's taking place nationwide, certainly here in America, but then, John, obviously, internationally with people from all walks of life, protesting racism and racial injustice. How do you see your company kind of operating as kind of what I would imagine is kind of this agent of equality. Obviously, you have a diverse team, there at Bouqs, and I alluded to this earlier, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because what the flower represents as a unifier, right, of people, right? Because people of all walks of life can do business with you equally. And when you talked about those different events, those are events that people have irregardless of how they look in the mirror. And so can you talk about that somehow? Your company is, kind of involved in that. Maybe you are involved in that personally, but amidst all the racial protests and things like that, where your company kind of stands in all that.
Yeah, we've always been a company where diversity has been important and also natural, right? As you said, flowers are just a product that is a vehicle for a sentiment, right? And that those sentiments are driven by love. It could be I'm sorry, it could be I love you, it could be congratulations, it could be condolences. All of those things are driven by love, right? And so we just want the best people that want to help spread love. And that has led to over-indexing across gender, across race and ethnicity, across LGBTQ. And so for us, we just want amazing people that love other people, and that has led to a really diverse team. Yeah. I would say that, personally, I would say that it's been a real awakening for me. I think my impression of where we were, sort of post the Obama presidency, was that we had sort of arrived, right? Like racial injustice it still happened, but it was smaller and smaller of an issue. And it's like, it's crazy to think that was just 3 weeks ago that I felt that way. Right. And I think a lot of people felt that way. And so I think it's been powerful. And the fact that it continues, and there's still so much strength and momentum behind it, because there are so clearly systematic injustices that still exist. And the fact that there are still people resisting reform to that in the midst of this is almost mind-blowing to me. And so, what we've been trying to do as a brand is to continue to stand for love, right? And that means equality, and that means equal access, and that means equal justice. And so we've always celebrated Pride Month, since the beginning of the company. We and I think it was the first or second year we created a rainbow bouquet, because for us, love is love, right? Doesn't matter. Right. And justice is justice. It shouldn't matter the tone of our skin or where we live or what our background is or whatever it might be. We should all be equal under the eyes of the law. And so we took a pretty firm and public stance pretty quickly that we stand with the protesters and for severe reform to create equal justice. And we did a bunch of research. It was great. We engaged with all of our team, and we just asked people, like, how do you want to show up for this? Like, what is it that we want to do together to try to make this better? And we landed on a great organization called Campaign Zero, which is a research-driven, policy-based organization trying to create change around police brutality, right? And just really looking at the mechanisms by which we as people can help them make that systematic change. And so we've been actively supporting them. We donated $20,000 a couple weeks back to that organization. What we're trying to do most is just try to continue the conversation and be advocates for supporting the movement,
Absolutely.
Because it does fit exactly in with what we do, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate you sharing that, John, on a number of different levels. One, I've said this on previous episodes of the podcast that, proximity breeds empathy. And so what you explained earlier in terms of, people getting, and particularly white people getting a closer proximity to that problem, and a lot of what's taken place over the last several years, more recently, as things have been on social media, and you've had videos and things like that where people can really see what's really going on. And I think people just got to a point where, again, that they have a closer proximity, and every generation has gotten a closer proximity to that problem. And so now that, you and your team and that sort of thing from a cultural standpoint are working to inspire change by being involved and getting involved with the proper organizations, I think is tremendous. And then I really loved go ahead.
was just saying, what's interesting, and also I just think super frustrating, and it angers me now, is we and I in particular watched the Eric Garner video as well, and we all watched no charges be filed in that case.
Right.
And I remember being outraged, just so angry when that happened. But yet this kind of energy didn't happen in the populace. Like, for whatever, it was almost the exact same thing happened.
Right. Oh, of course. Yeah. It's very close.
Almost the exact same thing. And yet, for whatever reason, the social construct, we as a people didn't rise up in anger and say no more. We didn't do it then. And I don't understand why. And I look back on it and I'm like, why did we not all wake up then? It's so strange, but
yeah,
it's clearly long past due. And my only hope is that we can play some role in helping to continue the momentum so that we can get some real change in a systematic way across the country, instead of some, what I'm most afraid of now is like sort of some PR sort of focused, oh, we'll change this small thing, but it actually doesn't get to the root cause of the issue.
Right.
And so that's where I'm personally more focused, is how do we make sure this is a permanent, ongoing movement, not just a flash in the pan, sort of short-term PR driven, social media driven thing that then fades away because of some new news cycle, which will happen inevitably. Something else will happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying to do our part.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then I love the piece, about the flower, and you mentioned the word sentiment, and how it's a token of love to whatever sentiment that you're trying to express. It's all centered around love. And again, that's where the proximity breeds empathy. It brings you closer to that love, to where you can feel that pain, and you can develop an empathy towards it. And then the next piece of it is that empathy inspiring authentic action by everybody getting involved and being a part of that solution. So definitely thank you for that. John, what's next for the Bouqs Company? So now obviously things are starting to open up, right? And we'll see what the what reality is. I know people say new normal and that sort of thing, but there was reality before the pandemic, there's reality now, and then there'll be reality kind of afterwards. What do you see as next? What's the next step for your company?
Yeah, we announced in our January announcement that with our $30 million investment that we were going to go into retail and to international. We're going to start with Japan and then go into broader Asia. Yeah. When you talk about like impact of COVID-19 coronavirus on our business, the biggest probably impact is that we just had to slow down those plans, because our plan was to be into retail this year, but with essentially a forced closure of most retail, and it's just starting to inch out again. Those plans have been delayed. And then just the practical reality of international launching in the midst of a place where people aren't really traveling, we had to slow down those plans as well. And so those are still on the horizon. A big focus on bringing our flowers into local retail to enable weddings and events and corporate and funerals and all these other things that happen when you have a presence in the local community is still going to be sort of the next big push. And that's going to come, call it maybe end of the year or early next year instead of what we thought would be this summer. Mm-hmm. And then international will happen as well. And it's just probably more 2021 instead of 2020. So those are still our areas of focus. Internally today, there's a lot of focus on, continue to expand our selection of products, our plants, our vases, and then our subscription business, which has really been sort of a hallmark of the business since the beginning, but in the last couple of years has really taken off. And so those are kind of the today focus, but we're still aiming for the same things, over time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Fun question for you, John. So we get into something fun. So you've talked about the rounds of funding that you all have been able to raise over time, and having a couple of the ABC Sharks get involved with the company. Fun question for you. If I were to, no strings attached, if I were to show up with a truck and bring you $100 million, right? $100 million cash, no strings attached, no nothing. I'm not expecting any return. I'm not anything. I'm just here, John, for the Bouqs Company. Here's $100 million. What would you do with it and why?
So that's for the business, or just for anything?
Well, just for anything. Let's just say I just bring you $100 million.
Wow.
Yeah. and you can use it for anything. Yeah.
I was thinking of it as an investment. That's a bigger.
Yeah. Oh no, I just show up and say, here's $100 million.
Yeah. So first thing I would do is, pop over to my parents' house, drop off a couple million there, make sure they're good. Sisters, close family.
Right.
Take care of all the family.
Of course.
I think from there I would probably, and this is going to sound kind of boring because it's going to sound so corporate. No, but I think I would then go look at some of the best, the institutions have had the biggest impact for positive change in the history of time. Right. And I don't know what those would be. So I would do the research, and I would see what model they use and try to replicate it. So I don't know if it is, but let's pretend the Gates Foundation has had the most positive change. Again, I'm just using an example. I have no idea who it is. And, I'd probably just spend the rest of my life making that money turn into positive change for people, because I wouldn't, and this is going to sound magnanimous, and it's not. I was raised very Catholic.
Sure.
And so was always raised to, take care of your neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. My drive in my career has been sort of for two main drivers. One is I'm wildly curious. I just wonder what's going to happen next. And so business stuff is fun because it's interesting.
Yeah.
But the other one is monetary, not for me, but just to get my family to a point where I don't have to work, so I can spend all the rest of my time helping other people who've just not been as fortunate as I've been.
Right.
We grew up pretty poor, but I had parents who cared a lot about us. They read to us every night. They sent us to really good public schools. And I just had a foundation that was very supportive and conducive towards success.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't have that. Right.
Of
So
course.
I would want to take 90 of that 100. The other 10 would go to the family, the friends, and, that kind of stuff. I'd probably buy a cool electric scooter or something too.
Right.
And endow something to just, make the world better.
Yeah.
And hopefully someday I can get to that point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you've spoken kind of throughout the time here today, John, about family. And, I'd like to ask you, what does family mean to you as it relates to, how you're developing your business? Obviously, family has to be very supportive and that sort of thing. But, talk to me a little bit about that, about the importance of family and the importance of family, in general, just for the entrepreneur. We talked earlier about, the challenges that come with starting up and that sort of thing, and maybe leaving a corporate job. Which I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, they have this dilemma, right? They want to get out of corporate. They want to do their own thing. They feel like they want to be, quote unquote, their own boss and that sort of thing. But the challenge is, like I say, starting up. And in some cases, that toughest voice is that of family and friends in terms of that startup. Yeah. So just talk about that and just the importance of it.
Yeah. So, we literally could not have launched this business without my family. So our first investors were my mom and dad. They put in $1,000. My sister put in $2,000. A couple friends who I consider family put in $1,000. We had $13,000 to start the business, and my co-founder and I put in 8 of it. But that 5, they were our first investors. And then my mom came out of retirement at 70 to be our first customer service representative. And my sister, who worked in HR, volunteered her time, was our HR lead for 3 years. My other sister was doing sales. So literally the family threw in on this thing from day one. And my wife, I always say to her, she built this business because she was I was like, babe, I need you to be the breadwinner. I need you to, she was working as an assistant principal in a public high school here in Santa Monica. Yeah. And I was like, you need to bring home the bacon because I'm not going to make any money for a while. And so she threw down. And so the entrepreneur can only make it all work with a village helping push it all, right? It's literally impossible to do it on your own from just a day-to-day execution perspective. Right. And then from a mental, emotional, psychological perspective, having that village is absolutely critical because the whole thing becomes too much way too often. It's really hard, right? And you said they want to be their own boss. I used to think that too, I want to be my own boss. Once you're a founder or a CEO, your boss is all your customers,
all your
employees,
vendors, right?
All your vendors, all your partners, like that. Your investors, like there's no such thing.
Yeah, you
there's
pick
no
up
job
hundreds of bosses.
It's like retired person who kind of does stuff here and there for fun. Like that's the only time you're your own boss, right?
Right.
And so you need that village to really lift you up and carry you through the really hard times. Because we've had, I mean, it is a roller coaster, right? And the highs are never as high as you feel like they are, and the lows are never as low. But there are real highs and real lows, and it is a taxing journey. It is the hardest thing I've ever done by far. It will probably be the hardest thing I will ever do. And your family, and when I say family, I extend it to really close friends and those in the community who sort of really lifted us up and helped us through this thing. Absolutely critical to making it through those tough times. And for me, the driving forces were always, I want to make them all proud. I want them to feel great about being my wife, my mom, my sisters, whatever it might be.
Right.
And then I also want to show up for all those people that were depending on me to show up, right? Like the team, the investors, the sense of responsibility they have to all of them, because they took off, they'd left another job to come work for us, or they put money in us instead of putting money into someone else. It's a really great responsibility. I felt like they deserved everything I could possibly bring to the table because of that faith in us and because of that faith in me. And so, I would just sort of grind through those tough times because I owed those people everything.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Definitely a great way to put that, John. So as we get towards kind of wrapping up, because I've enjoyed this conversation. This has been tremendous, John, to say the least. Wrapping up, what are 1 to 2 kind of best practices you would share? I mean, you've shared several just throughout our conversation, but what are if there's if you were sitting here and you were just talking to someone was a few years ago, right, looking to start up, maybe they're in their corporate job, maybe they don't enjoy it as much as like you enjoy Disney. They feel kind of stuck, right? What are 1 to 2 best practices you would share with that individual that have been successful for you?
Sure. So I think, like you said earlier, one of the biggest sort of impediments to getting started on your dreams, whatever those dreams might be, is you either external forces, family, friends, say, oh, you can't do that, or this isn't going to work, whatever. And you have to tune literally all of that out. You have to get to a place where you're so convinced that you'll be successful, but it does not matter who tells you. I mean, think about it. All 5 sharks told me that I was going to fail, essentially, right? Too expensive. Exactly. We just watched it. Terrible. Yeah. You have to tune out all those people and understand that you're going to bet on you and that you can make this thing happen, right? Yeah. And then the other part is you have to recognize that you don't have to give up everything else to do it. You can do it on the side. It's going to take longer. It's going to be harder, but you don't have to give up your corporate job to become an entrepreneur. You don't have to. It means you're going to be working, call it a 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, and from 7 to 10 Monday through Friday, and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you're never really going to have a break. Right. But if the hard work's going to scare you off, then it's not for you anyway, right? There is no harder job in terms of time you're going to spend, right? And sort of weight on your shoulders. And so the best advice I would give is just ignore the naysayers, right? Or convince them that they're wrong, which is even more powerful.
Right.
And then just get started. Like I said earlier, just get started. If you can't quit the job, then start working on it every Saturday morning, and then extend that to every Saturday and Sunday. Then extend that to Monday nights as well. And pretty soon the momentum starts to happen, and you start going like, oh, hey, this is actually starting to whoa, I got a team now. I got 3 people helping me. They're all pitching in nights and weekends too. Oh, this one person is going to business school, and they're willing to do it for free for all summer because, and those types of things are what happened for us, right? My mom worked out of retirement part-time. My sister, I got a kid from UCLA to come in to be our coder. And like all of a sudden the pieces started moving. And then once you get momentum, you start to see results. It's easier to start going like, oh, hey, maybe I can convince my boss to give me a shorter schedule so I can work on this more, or a Monday through Thursday and Fridays. And you can just start thinking about how you can negotiate your way to the reality. And then at some point you got to just take the leap, right? You got to go all the way, which is what I did in October of 2012. I said, all right, this is the right time. I'm going to go do this thing for real. But I think people think it's either or, right? I have to have my corporate job or I can go pursue this. And there's a way to de-risk it and still move it forward, but you got to be really committed to moving it forward. And it's wildly uncomfortable, right? Working nonstop all the time isn't super fun.
Right.
But that's what you sometimes have to do to get it going.
Yep, definitely. I can speak to that firsthand, and I've shared obviously with the audience here, John, that my foray into ownership, my hand was forced. I was in banking, 17-year banker. January 4th of 2018 at 3:45 p.m. CEO says thanks, but no thanks. Right. I had started doing my own kind of bank consulting and that kind of, like you say, as my side, and then, like you say, my hand was forced once the corporate job ended. Right. But, like you said, there's a lot of ways to hedge and to, like you say, kind of moderate the risk so that you could get out there and get started. But like you said, it's going to require the commitment of time and that sort of thing to the hard work. So I love that.
And the great thing for you was your hands forced, but then you're kind of like, all right, now I can
you gotta
try
do it.
this. Yeah. And if you try it for 3-6 months, whatever it is, and it doesn't go great, well, then you can go get a job.
Right.
Yep, and you're probably more employable for having had the journey that you had in between, right? And if it goes great, then here you are years later.
Here we are. You going?
Make it happen, right?
Yep, exactly. You're exactly right. John Tabis, our guest today, founder and CEO of the Bouqs Company. Of course, links and things like that will be in the show notes, MYB, so you'll be able to connect. But, John, what are ways that people can connect with you? People listening to this that may have questions, want to continue the conversation, maybe want to learn a little bit more about the company. How can they do so?
Sure. So Bouqs is at Bouqs.com, Bouqs.com, like bouquet, but shortened. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, John Tabis, Tabis, or at my website, johntabis.com, JOHNTABIS.com.
Yep. Excellent. Listen, John, thank you so much. And taking time today here on a Monday of all days, taking time to be here on the Minding Your Business podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation. Would love to remain connected. Look forward to flowers. I'm glad to have a new a flower vendor. It'll help me obviously with my relationship with my wife and
you got to get on that
other people I work with. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So yeah, that makes it very simple for us knucklehead guys all over the world, and even more so in all seriousness, an opportunity again to express those sentiments in the form of flowers. That's tremendous. So love what you've done. You've shaken things up, and I love that you continued on even after Shark Tank to convert 2 sharks. That's tremendous to be able to do that. So John, thank you so much. Thank you to you and your team. Thank you for your comments around, kind of racial injustice and, your comments around COVID-19 in that positivity. I think that's great for all of us. Best wishes to you personally and professionally. And I look forward to speaking again. I'd love to have you on in the future with some updates.
Would love to. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, John. Take care. All right, MYB. So we are fortunate to have John, and I love all our guests whenever we have guests here on the Minding Your Business podcast, because every guest, local, national, international, always brings a great flavor, great energy to the show, and always leaves us with great best practices for us to consider on how to journey that we're on, whether you're in the workforce or whether you're in business. Subscribe to the show, 5-star on Apple, helps us continue to grow our reach and connect with more people like yourself, more like-minded people that are on this journey as well. www.themybpodcast.com is where you can learn more. I had to switch vendors on building the directory in terms of coders and programmers. The last one was not able to cut the mustard. That's just part of it. And so I'm actually hired someone else to help build out our directory. So give me another week or so on that. We will have the directory up. That'll be free for anybody that has been a guest on the Minding Your Business podcast. Otherwise, you will be able to get on and pay just $240 for the year or $20 a month to be in the directory. That directory will go out to a lot of different avenues of people that have purchasing power and disposable income that you will want your business or organization in front of. If you're interested, email me, Ron, R-O-N, at themybpodcast.com. Ron at themybpodcast.com. Love to connect with you if you want to get in the directory. And it's a place, I promise you, that you will want to be. BrandPod, your brand's voice amplified. That's www.brandyourpod.com. Listen, now is the time to launch your podcast. I'm just telling you, I'm working with banks. I'm now working with an advertising company here just outside the local Memphis market. Now's the time, if you want to be able to connect with your customers, even as things are opening up, your customers and people that will be interested in your business aren't all on your social media timeline, okay? They're in many places all around your local area, around the country and around the world, people that want to hear your content and want to connect with you. So one way to do that is through your own podcast. I'll help you develop your idea, your process, your infrastructure, and then help you launch your podcast and then help you monetize your podcast so that it is a revenue driver for you. But in order to do that, you have to go to brandyourpod.com and schedule a time for us to have a consultation and share with you some ways that you can do that. I love to be able to help. I love to be able to help you launch your own very own podcast platform where you own the content. That's different than your social media. When you post to social media, they own the content. When you have your own podcast, you own the content. So if you want to be an owner of your own content, that's the way to do it, brandyourpod.com. Of course, the podcast is brought to you, as always, by the Binge Podcast Network. The Binge Podcast Network, shout out to them. You can check us out on Facebook as well as join the MYB community on Facebook, which that link will be in the show notes as well. Listen, Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast, this has been episode 162. Thank you again to our guest, John Tabis, founder and CEO of the Bouqs Company. Thank you to all of you, everybody on Facebook, Spreaker, YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud, everywhere that you guys are. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode. We'll catch you next time on the Minding Your Business podcast. Be great, be peace.